actually had a senior who was at ENACTUS, and I think I was very interested in the concept. So then I kind of got into it. And like ma'am was saying, right, for us, Jalruti was a turning point, because so far we had just been studying in class and we had been reading and we had been seeing what other ENACTUS seniors were up to. But this was like our golden moment that, okay, we get to try out something and it's our job to test it out. And how do we make it happen? So really, I think for me, the whole seeing things in action is just very exciting. So for me, that was the turning point to say that, Jalruti and all of the experiences that it brought along, at the end of the day, it was for me to say that, this was a lot more fun and a lot more intellectually stimulating than sitting and analyzing financial statements. So sure, I'm good at analyzing financial statements maybe, but is that what I want to do, or is that the end goal? Like, I still do that, but I do that for a different goal, right? So for me, that was really the shift in trajectory, and the reason I kind of got into the impact space. To give a little bit of oh yeah oh god yeah so BMS I was totally doable, but the point was, let's do something different, and ENACTUS was the way for me to kind of figure out what that was for me. To give a little bit of context, background, just what I'm hoping to achieve here, etc., and a little bit about me also. So like I just said, I was at ENACTUS, learned a lot from Jalruti. We also had a bunch of other projects going on at the time. So we had a lot of, just getting into the weeds of moving to communities, doing your needs assessment, understanding really what's the problem, and not just trying to force fit a solution that, we like and looks glamorous. So for me, that was the starting point. That was the reason I got interested in the development space. From a technical perspective, I love numbers. So for me, it was that, okay, how can I make the two meet? So once BMS ended, I joined Dasra, which is basically an organization that helps with directing better money into development in India, right? So we work with people like the Gates Foundation, we work with CSR, we work with the Azim Premjis of the world, to say that if this is the pot of money that you want to give to India, either it's for philanthropy or it's for investments with return expectations, how can you direct it in the most efficient way possible, right? And we are sector agnostic. So I have worked across child protection, sanitation, disability, etc. So that's one side of the work that I do. And then the other side is also that if we're getting this money, how do we make sure that this money is put to the best possible use, right? So we also work with the recipients of those funds, which are often nonprofits and social enterprises, lots of startups, to say that what's the kind of capacity building support we can offer, right? How can you strengthen your organization? How can you strengthen your program? Right now, you're in maybe one state. What does it take to use this money and leverage it to go to 10 states, right? So that's the other kind of work that I've been doing. And now I'm at a place where I feel like it's time to do something of my own. Dasra has been doing the work it does for bigger ticket funders. And I think it's very interesting that, if people like everyone on this call and really the millennial and Gen Z population of India was a little more, I think all of us want to do more. Sometimes we struggle. It's a little hard. So what does it take to really get there, right? Which is why I'm working on a platform called Good Step. It's essentially, we're trying to say that how can you use gamification, community, how can you make it fun to do good for people and planet, which is, to give you an example, I think all of us gift things to our friends on our birthdays. Maybe we spend $2,000 on a bouquet of flowers that's going to wilt after 2 days. Instead of that, can we spend that 2,000 rupees to sponsor education for 1 year for a girl child sitting in Jharkhand, right? There are such simple switches we can all make, and we are all adept with technology. We can literally do it online, but sometimes it doesn't strike us. So that's really what I'm working on, and very much an open invitation to everyone on this call, that if you are interested in the space and would like to be a part of this effort, help in whatever way you're interested in, very much happy to do that, and I'll share those details towards the end of our conversation. But essentially that's where I'm at right now. What I'm hoping to accomplish through this session really is give you all kinds of tactical advice, right, on what does it take to get into the space, because I think that's what's most important. So feel free, let's make it a very freewheeling, open, conversational session. I really don't mind getting interrupted at any point. So anytime that you think, I think questions are best live. So, just feel free to say, hey, I have a question, and tell me what's up, and we'll get to it. Yeah. So let's think of this as a fun coffee chat. Get out your beverages and we will dive into it. But one of the things I thought we could start off with was actually just to give all of you a visual depiction of what ENACTUS was for us, right? Or what is the journey of exploring the impact space in college like, and what makes it so exciting. So with that, I have like a 1-minute video, and I'd love to share it with you folks. So I'm just going to play it here. Yeah. Let me know if the audio and all of that is fine, because sometimes Zoom has problems. But just one moment, let me play it.
If I could take this heart of mine and make it beat in drumless time, and fill it up with all my love, to run the race, to rise above it. And I will take this dream inside and blaze across the finish line. A firework, a shooting star. I'm almost there, I've come so far. I see the banners flying there, my home flag waving in the air. And I've seen many things, but I've waited my whole life for this dream.
So that is just a small snippet of everything you do at ENACTUS, right? Or really everything that you do when you make the most of college opportunities, right? You're on a stage globally. That's something our seniors did. You're featured by all kinds of media, which was good fun, but also you're challenged a lot. You're on all kinds of panels with people who are heads of like the HULs of the world, and you're answering questions about what is this business model? Why are we doing it? But I think the most rewarding and, away from the glamour, but the most heartwarming part of all of this is when you really go to the village and talk and meet with the people that you're working for, right? And I don't like the word beneficiaries at all. I think, if we are in the space, they are our customers. It's our job to do something good, quality for them. And that feeling when you feel like, okay, I've been able to accomplish that, I think that's the best part of the entire experience. What is interesting also is that, all of this is, I think, talked about. We've all seen, ENACTUS or HR for its efforts in development, and students working in impact often gets, featured. You get a lot of opportunities, you get sponsorship opportunities. It's all amazing. But some of the things that you often don't talk about is the learning that comes out of it, right? And I want to spend a minute to talk about that, and then we can get into a couple of questions I have for you folks. But basically, I think, so for me, when I think about ENACTUS, it was very much a playground for experimentation, right? I think now that we've come, 3 years away from college, we've realized that college was a great time. Lots of, no risk, no regret experimentation. And I would urge all of you to make the most of it. To give you an example, I think Kanupriya ma'am was hinting towards the model that we used for Jalriddhi, which was basically a cross-subsidy model. And what we did is we set up 2 parallel streams, which we were hoping would fund each other, right? And while that's a great opportunity and a great model in college, when I think about it now, I know that the challenges that Jalriddhi had, and I know that something of that sort needs to be designed a little differently if we wanted to scale, right? Because otherwise, if you have 2 things working in tandem, one is not going to grow unless the other grows. So literally it was that, okay, college, and the fact that we did that with Jalriddhi, we experimented, gave me, I think, and gave all of us the, room to kind of play around and learn and say, okay, what is it that we can do differently? So, there's also this whole flip side, which maybe we don't talk about very often, which is that you are free to fail. This is where you can do all of your experimentation. There is a solid institution with amazing faculty and a great team that is supporting you. So you literally just need to bring the best of your ideas to the forefront and not doubt it, right? And just go for it, give it a test. Like literally just keep testing, piloting. Does it work? Does does it not? Let's move. That's really the approach that I think works well, because literally for us also, when we did the whole ideation process, and there was this whole open call for ideas at ENACTUS, where anyone, and Anshul and I were first year students at that point, so literally anyone was free to kind of come and put forth their ideas. You were extensively questioned, and rightly so, because the entire institution is kind of putting their bet on you, and does that work? But really, like, it's very much an open space for you to kind of come and say, hey, I think we should do this. Here's why, here's the case, does this work? And if not, then we'll move on. And the beautiful part about it is that whichever idea the team believes in, then the entire backing of the entire team, irrespective of which idea, who has put forth, comes together to work in that direction. So, it's really about saying that one of the things I love, and the reason I think that college is the best time to really go crazy with experimentation, do every possible thing you can. And I think you can do a lot more, while remote working has its cons, it also has the pros that you can be present in multiple places at the same time and be doing a lot of things. So I would just say that is, while it has its cons, the beautiful opportunity side of it is that you should just go crazy experimenting. You think you want to try something out, just go do it. At this point, it takes a day to set up a website. You'll get your idea tested in a month, and then you'll see what happens. So literally, that's the kind of mindset that we all, I think, will benefit a lot from, if we kind of look at remote working that way and everything that HR has to offer. With that, I did have, so I'm not very big on slides. I understand that we are all tired of seeing PPTs on Zoom. So I've tried to keep it super simple. I'd love for it to be very interactive. So like I said earlier, just jump in with any questions that you have. But I wanted to start off with just getting a little bit of a pulse check on the room, in terms of where you folks are thinking. I'd love to get as many responses as possible. But I just wanted to understand, everyone here, our topic is about navigating careers in social impact and sustainability. So I just wanted to get a sense from the room that what is exciting, what is one promising factor that is the reason you're in this room and that attracts you to the space? And just feel free to unmute and go for it.
I think for me, it's the fact that it's very gratifying. Like it satisfies me internally to do something like that.
Very nice. Anybody else?
I think, like, personally, I started ENACTUS because I really didn't know what social entrepreneurship was before I came here. And it was kind of like a place where I could just learn. So I thought of it as a learning opportunity more than anything else. It was like learning, like it's a learning experience, as well as if there is something I can do to give back to society, then why would I not do that? Yeah. So I think those two things were the main things that, kept me like going for it.
Got it. Can we have one or two more responses?
So it gives me so much satisfaction that we help every member there out there, the villagers, and each one of them. It really satisfies us by helping them and by selling them the things which are most affordable.
Got it.
Kanchan, I think you were saying something. Couldn't get you. Yeah.
So I was saying I'm in this space because there is a scope for innovation, that you get something to build from scratch or innovate it a better way, enhance the product, the fact that, and it also gives you a satisfaction after seeing those smiles and the people you have helped.
Got it. No, that's very interesting. Gives a great perspective on the room. So I think it's very lovely, and I think it's nice. And I also think the reason the impact space is growing so well is because all of us want to do more good, right? I think even with COVID, etc., we've all become increasingly aware about the kind of inequities in our world. Whether it's children being orphaned by COVID, migrant workers, all of that. So I love, and I think that's always your number one driving force for why you want to work in this space, and that needs to continue because it is a difficult space to navigate, right? It's one of your less common choices. It is a little ambiguous in how it's structured, but always that passion to help and that sense of gratification, like one of you mentioned, is what keeps you driving. What I do want to make a case for through the rest of this conversation is also how this is an amazing opportunity for you. Literally in terms of saying, I think what I find most exciting is that these are problems that have have existed for decades and more, who has solved intergenerational poverty today, right? It's still very much India's top problem. So it's also to say that the best and brightest minds are obviously needed to solve these big problems that we have not solved for decades. So how do you take that up also to say, hey, this is a space where I'm going to be challenged intellectually and be pushed to achieve more than I think I'm capable of achieving? Because I can say from experience that's true. It's also like I was very similar. My story was very similar. But the first thing was, oh, it feels nice. I like that I'm able to help someone. But it's also a very interesting, exciting, and intellectually challenging job. Like literally, I mean, you get asked these questions by funders all the time that, hey, why do we still have children in orphanages? Why are we still not able to establish a system where even children who don't have parents who can take care of them are still in families? Because technically everyone has the right to family as per our constitution. So very interesting questions. I always make that case that there are like 10 frameworks. Sorry, I'm really dissing financial statement analysis, but there are 10 frameworks to do that. You choose one of them, you'll be done. I mean, sure, it might be a little effort intensive. You may spend a week cleaning your data up, but have you really challenged the way you think? Sometimes in my experience, maybe not. But I can say with confidence that every week that I've gone to work in the past 3 years, I've always felt like, oh, that's an interesting problem, or I don't know how to do this. And then you kind of figure it out. So, that's the other side to the whole, what is attractive about the space, in addition to generally the fact that it's amazing to help someone and you do feel good by doing good. But that's interesting. I think there's a flip side. And the next question I kind of wanted to ask, and I don't know why this is not biased. So now, okay, we talked about the promising factor. What is a reservation or a concern that you have about joining the space? And the reason for asking is, I'd love to do my best to either shed light on it or hopefully even alleviate these concerns. I'd love to know, what do you think holds you back? If you were saying that, okay, I want to get into a proper career, sure, ENACTUS is a little bit of experimental time, but just thinking long term, 1-2 years down the line, what do I want to do? What is holding you back from saying social impact or sustainability is the answer?
I think there are a couple of things. Firstly, lack of information about the sector would be the first one. And secondly, lack of information about how the monetary thing works, how much scope there is to make money in this sector. And I think that is one of the most important factors while choosing a career, because 10 years down the line, I don't want to regret the choice that I'm making right now.
100%, very valid. Anybody else?
I think even I would agree, as we don't have the right knowledge in this industry. Even I sometimes feel that will I be able to earn enough, or will I be able to sustain myself, live independently? So that is one issue that does, some way hold me back.
Understood. Very fair.
Also to add to it, add to the knowledge part, like we don't really know where to get started with this sector. Like now in college, we are doing ENACTUS, but what after that? Like how do we start with it in the corporate world? So that one.
Got it.
I feel like for the large part, I've just believed that the only way to do it is to work with NGOs, which again, it's a concern monetarily. So don't know how to navigate that.
Got it. Okay, super. Anybody else? Any final concerns, reservations? Lovely. No, I think these are the most common ones. So we have lack of information, not sure if this is monetarily a good idea, and where do I start? Okay, so I'm very happy to say I do have some thoughts on that. I was just like, oh my God, what if someone throws a bit of a odd ball at me? I'm just like, I don't know how to answer that, but this is great. Okay, cool. So getting into answering some of those questions, and I'll try to show you what the space looks like, how do you get started, things you can really do every day, and then we'll obviously jump in with questions, but also we have some time back towards the end to have a more free-flowing questions, follow-up questions type of conversation. Yeah. Okay. So just to show you what the space looks like, and this is a little small, I'm very sorry for that. I'll walk you through it and I'll share these slides later so you can zoom in and look around. But the space is very big. So, this whole thought process that working with developed means कि आप NGO में काम करते हो is not true anymore. I think, and honestly, this landscape is outdated. It was somehow the best representation. It's 2018. It's a representation of 2018. I think the space has grown even more, but you literally have things to do all across. So you obviously have your traditional nonprofits, but bigger players than that in today's world are your corporates and your government and multilateral agencies, right? So when I say corporates, and this is where your whole money-making factor gets a little solved for, is that even people like, the Hindustan Unilever, for example, or you even have PepsiCo, basically all of these folks who face severe risk in terms of litigation because they don't meet any sustainability standards are now the ones putting the most money into it. And they are paying well for people to get there. Okay, sure, it's a journey for you to land that role, but the whole, monetary potential of the space has really grown because of the kind of interest and liability that corporates face these days because of the laws coming in. So generally that accountability is increasing, and they are looking for more people who can help them say, how can we be seen as socially responsible organizations? How can we be seen as people who have a climate positive reputation and are not damaging the planet? All of that kind of stuff. And the other big unit of people who are very interesting are obviously Government of India. They have the biggest money for development because obviously it's their foremost job to do that. And then you also have your multilateral agencies, which are your UN agencies of the world, who are also doing a lot of work in India. So, and these are also folks who, because of the kind of immense responsibility they have to deploy their big money, are also offering very interesting roles in this space with great compensation. So literally, in addition to everyone you see here, you have these two bodies who are very much actively looking for people to bring into the space and to be seen, like I said, deploying their budgets well because they have big money for social responsibility and sustainability purposes. But if we just read this graph a little bit, you have obviously all of your implementing organizations, which, all of us have worked on through ENACTUS, generally know about your Teach for Indias and Prathams of the world. But then you have this whole ecosystem around them. So you have people who do advisory and consulting in the space. You have people who are dedicated towards raising money for the space. You have people who are looking at monitoring the space, right? That if you are educating 500 kids today, what happened to them 20 years down the line? There's this whole monitoring and evaluation practice, which is really coming up. So I think just the message of the slide is that the landscape is huge. We often see it only as non-profit, and that's a very common perception of the sector. But the truth is that it's growing so much more beyond that and beyond traditional boundaries, where you even have organizations which are huge, which are your, HULs and PepsiCos of the world, who are now looking at more sustainability and impact-oriented roles. So that's just a little bit on that. And again, feel free to interject in case of any questions. But what I found, I looked at that landscape, and like I said, it was a little old, right? So I just tried to put something together very quickly that here are the kinds of organizations you can consider, and here are the kinds of roles. And this is very indicative. Honestly, while this table is also pretty big, there's endless opportunity. You could carve out a role for yourself, right? If you set up a social enterprise of sorts. But essentially, look at the landscape. Like if you look at the horizontal, table in blue, and you look at the organization types, it's evolving. It's not just your government or just your nonprofits. I think we all know about how the social startup space is booming. The kind of valuations there are for startups in India. So therefore, you need to be asking yourself that, listen, if I'm an employee with like a 1% stake in this company, I'm not going to be in a bad space financially. So, even that's an interesting space to explore. Then you also have responsible businesses, which are literally, businesses that are looking to be seen as planet positive. And then you have even your Tatas of the world who are conventional companies, but because of India's CSR laws, they are required to spend 2% of their profits on any kind of impact projects that they choose to. So even that's a space to explore. So essentially your playing ground is pretty wide, in terms of the kinds of organizations. And what's more exciting is that even the roles are endless. Like, just ask yourself, is there any kind of undergrad program that you you don't see having application over here. You know, if you're a BAF student, you could very much consider financing or strategies similar from BMS. If you're a BMM student, there's so much work happening just on design thinking to say that how can we understand human behavior and mindset more and plan and design our programs to respond to that, instead of just force-fitting the same program which has worked in one location in 15 other locations, when all locations have very different cultures and contexts. So literally, I mean, what I find most exciting about this is that, you know, every course that colleges in India offer these days, there is potential for application for all of them, because the space is really growing. I think initially we only thought of it as program implementation, that okay, I can go and I can maybe run a class as a Teach for India fellow, but it's gone way beyond that, and there's a lot of more exciting stuff that you can do. I'm happy to take a pause here. If there are any questions on what any of this means? I know the left-hand side might be a little new, so happy to kind of walk through it very quickly and then see if there are any questions. I think program implementation is what we've always heard about, you know, in terms of if it's education, then you're maybe teaching in a classroom. If it's healthcare, maybe if you don't have the technical expertise, you could still be supporting, let's say, a hospital or a primary healthcare center in any village. So that part is pretty simple. Then you have strategy and consulting, which is very similar to what I do. I mean, it is what I do, where basically what we do is, I think now there's a lot of more discourse and interest in the sector that, you know, we've just been blindly implementing programs for a long time, and maybe for the past decade or so we've started saying how can we be smarter about our resource allocation, because at this point there are like maybe 1,500 different education models just in Maharashtra alone, but we don't need 1,500 solutions for the same problem, right? So how can we find the top couple of solutions, and how can we all collaborate to make that happen? So that's one of the common things that strategy and consulting tries to do. And basically, it's a lot of different problems. It's also to say that recently I did this project with an organization that is a technical advisor to the government of Karnataka. So literally, the government of Karnataka has to solve for sanitation problems across the state. And this organization is advising them on how to do that. And we help them put that together, you know, to say that, okay, fine, what are the models? What's the kind of training? What do we need to implement this? So that's the kind of thinking. It's very typical strategy and consulting that you would expect with like a Bain or like a McKinsey or even EY or Big Fours of the world, but it's just in a different context, right? With different, and I would say more exciting problems. So that's on strategy and consulting. Then you have the whole financing piece of it, which is that now the money that is available to the sector is growing. It's no longer just philanthropy and just public sector money, right? You also have this whole very exciting space emerging, which is broadly known as impact investment. Which is also that you have venture capital firms, you have family offices, PE, private equity funds. All of them are looking at the impact space as a very interesting growing one, where if you are to put money in now, there are great return prospects, let's say 5-10 years down the line. So this space is really growing, but there are people saying that doing good is actually also good for money and good for my portfolio. And how do I establish that? And the way they do it is by funding social enterprises, right, which are startups which are in the space for profit and for good. And these guys will back those people and make an exit 5-6 years down the line at like 5x return and that kind of stuff. So that's broadly financing. Obviously, financing also has the more traditional folks where you have your development finance institutions, your World Banks, Asian Development Banks of the world, again, government agencies as well. So those are the traditional players, but there's this whole new exciting space of impact investors, which I think is a good one to explore. Then you have knowledge and evidence. So I think what's holding the space more accountable these days is that people have to report on outcomes. So they have to not only say that we have 20 kids in school right now, they have to say that, okay, we had 20 kids in school right now. We tracked them 20 years down the line. And here's how our program has helped them break out of intergenerational poverty because they were first-time learners in their family. So these are the first kids in the generation that went to school, and now here's how that helped the family as a unit, right? So there's a lot more interest in accountability and in reporting now. So you have a lot of roles which are around monitoring and evaluation, that how do you create a system by which we can monitor this, because it's very difficult, right? Literally picking up our example, where those 20 kids went 20 years down the line in life is not very easy to trace. It's not a very simple system of reporting. So how do you set up those kinds of frameworks? If you're someone who's interested in data, there's also a role for tech here, then that's a fun place to explore, and happy to share some names of people doing good work here as a post read after our session. Then you have this whole creative group, which is, marketing, communications, design, which is really coming up very nicely. So even now, I mean, there are all of these campaigns which are run. We did a campaign recently where we literally made adolescent girls from Jharkhand themselves source what is it that the girls want their local governments to do for them, and take those demands to the government. So, you have a lot of these innovative campaigns going on. You have a lot of design thinking going on, which is that what does it take? And so far, we've just taken the same model and pasted it everywhere. Can we now be a little more iterative, really understand how people are, interacting with systems, and accordingly put together our programs and our solutions? And then finally, you have technology, which is anyway big, up and coming across sectors in India at this point. And in the development sector, it's more about saying, very simply, everyone's looking at digitization, right? How can we make sure that we have all of our records online? Our program is operating online. We are even administering our programs online, even more so with COVID. So literally, I mean, it's beautiful, right? When you look at how all of your education nonprofits, for example, found ways to reach the kids even in remote settings, and actually ensure that the quality of teaching and learning remain the same, is mind-blowing, and there's a big role for tech to play. So that's what the landscape really looks like. And the question is just, where do I begin, right? Which is literally what I think one of you asked. I think I'm going to do this first. So here's what I think is a good thing to look at now, right? Where we are in college and all of that. And these are some of the things I've done. And I've also left some names in, for you folks to kind of look up. But I think the number one thing you can do is volunteer with college. It's very easy to do. Everyone is looking for volunteers. I think the give and get is that you give them your time and your skill, and they give you experience, right? You're able to say that I know how to design a program, for example. I've done it with ABC organization. So obviously you have opportunities to do this within college. So you have ENACTUS, you have United Way. I know we have a 180 degrees consulting, maybe at HR. I was just seeing it on LinkedIn. And then you have opportunities outside also. You have something called Connect For, which also is a great place to find volunteering opportunities. And they are not very mainstream only. You will get opportunities to, do some of the monitoring, evaluation, tech, website, that kind of work also, which is a little different. It's not just about, teaching kids online and that kind of stuff. I think the second one is very much picking up good courses in upcoming spaces. So when I think about upcoming spaces, there's a lot of work that's happening in saying, how can we capture data to do good? So literally, I mean, we've all heard about big data. We all know that none of our data is private anymore. And now there's this whole other school of thought, which is that if data is such a big asset today, how do you use it to do good? Which also, goes into the world of cryptocurrency, bitcoins, all of that. It's very interesting. There are a lot of courses on Coursera for this. It's very much linked to fintech also. And that's a fun space to explore. You look at your Coursera's of the world and you'll find a lot of courses on this. The other one that's interesting is user experience. So like I was saying, nowadays there is this shift in perspective where we don't want to see the people we work with and work for as beneficiaries. We want to see them as customers. So then we come back to the way of thinking that how can I, customer is king. How do I do the best service for them? Which means we need to understand them. What is their experience? How do we optimize that? So that is a space is also growing. So these are some spaces where, if you've done some kind of course or have some exposure, you have a bit of an edge, because today there are many people who are looking to enter the impact space. I don't think it's as new as it was 3 years ago. So it's also to say that what gives you that edge in addition to your undergrad degree to kind of make it here. I think the third one is very important. It really helped me that I think I was at a little bit of a disadvantage while looking for jobs, etc., from an education standpoint, because often the sector doesn't do a lot of entry level hiring. It's just how the sector is, very typical that people have reached their mid-level careers, then suddenly they have a change of heart and now I want to do some good, and then they move there. So if you're getting that kind of talent very easily, why would you want to invest in someone like me who's going to have to be taught everything from scratch? So one of the things that really helped was doing active reading. You have a lot of these resources. I'm happy to share some links later, but you literally have people like the India Development Review, Stanford Social Innovation Review. There are amazing books. Fortune at the Bottom of the Pyramid is one of my favorite ones. But these will really help you understand where is the sector going and what is new. And that really gives you an edge, because a lot of the folks who are making those switches from corporate, etc., are not aware of any of that. They are coming with just that, okay, mujhe, consulting karna aata hai. So now I pick up 5 frameworks I know and I'll apply them to this context, and that's that. But you will have a little bit of edge if you have kind of been reading about this space actively and know what's new and what's different. I think the fourth one is, internships, I think generally are very much encouraged across whichever space you're in. But a little bit of additional advice I'd give if you're looking at the impact space is to intern with organizations that are sector agnostic, which means that it's not like you're only learning about education or only learning about healthcare, because you are at an experimental mode in life. So am I at this point. Like, I don't feel comfortable committing to a sector yet. I still want to know how I can help, which is functionally, what is my role? Is it strategy? Is it finance? What is it? Versus for what I can help. Because once you say, if you get into, let's say out of college, you get into an organization that works only on education, you might just get absorbed by sector dynamics and not figure out what is your how. How are you going to play a role? Because you may not stick with that organization for too long. So is it more useful to learn everything about education, or is it more useful to learn everything about strategy at that point, which is a more transferable skill? So one of the ways to do that is to intern with organizations that are sector agnostic, which means they work across sectors. Dasra is one of them. There are a bunch. I'm happy to share a list later. I think the next one is that obviously, while you can always pick up these quick courses, do 1 month, 2 months of learning some of the things we talked about, there are some higher ed courses as well. You have these amazing, they're not courses really, they're like just structured programs. So one of the really good ones is there's the CM fellowship in a lot of states. I know Haryana still runs it. There are courses by the Tata Institute of Social Sciences. These are formal programs and they are structured to give you exposure to development. So literally, they will have these field projects. They're going to be teaching you exactly how you can, design programs, implement them. How do you see what is that progress tracking, all of that. Very cool opportunities. I would personally recommend getting some full-time experience. So, getting a job, and then maybe like 1-2 years after that job, you can consider a fellowship like this, because then you can make the most of that fellowship. The sixth one, and I cannot emphasize this enough, is networking. I think HR, literally where we are right now, is a great place to start. If I can connect you to any people I know in organizations you are interested in, I would be happy to. And many HR and I have done that for me. So how can we make sure that we make the most of this network that's available to us? And then also, how can you keep meeting people in the sector, right? So you literally have your LinkedIns of the world, which is very common. But then you also have some of these organizations. There's someone called the Impact Investors Council, Ashoka. They keep organizing conferences, which are always attended by the who's who of the sector. So literally, and now that it's online, it's even easier. You can send them a request for a video call. Sometimes people are very nice and they accept it. And, like you have 15 minutes to talk to like the person who started like Teach for India. Okay, so that's amazing. So you have to make the most of these kind of opportunities, which is stuff that is not very common, but is super, super effective. And I think finally, get your foot in the door, right? Like, you will not get your perfect job on day one. So what do? You will have to take on something which is lateral, because later you will make your way. So that's literally how I started off. Dasra is not a place that would typically hire. Unfortunately, there's a little bit of bias against University of Mumbai for I don't know what reason, but it's not the kind of place that would typically hire, from any of our Mumbai colleges really. So I just started off with an intern internship. And that internship gave me an opportunity to prove myself beyond my resume, which was maybe a little weak at the time, and then get that role. So literally it's about getting your foot in the door, right? What can you say? You literally just have to email everyone, figure out, even if they have roles which are not immediately in your area of interest, it's very easy to switch once you're inside. So just like make that commitment. It's only a 1 month thing. Even if it doesn't work out, it's fine. You'll still learn something, but there's a very high likelihood that you'll be able to move out. So that's just a little bit of, that whole question about how do we get started. I think these are some of the things you can do, and consistency is key. When I was in college, I was very stressed about where I'm going to work after this, because like I said, it's not a space at that point. Now we do, but at that point, it was not a space that did a lot of early stage hiring. So for me, it was about being consistent about all of these things, making sure I had those connections, networks, all of that, which really helped me kind of get that internship also, which then converted and all of that. I think finally, I just had one piece about, sharing a little bit of my journey and what I think I did differently, which, now that I think about it retrospectively, served me well. One is definitely, like I've been emphasizing, make college your playground, keep experimenting, okay? Like I have done internships in finance, marketing, event management, social entrepreneurship. Literally, there were no boundaries. It's not like you need to commit to a sector right now. So just keep experimenting, because I really believe selection by elimination is what helps in life. We'll never know this is what I want to do, but you will know this is what I don't want to do. So that's a good way to go. The second one is that you should really take all opportunities to explore your areas of interest, and sometimes they're not evident. So to give you an example, I think all of you know in our third year, we have to make a black book, right? And people often take up like company analysis and sector and lala. I did mine on the social enterprise landscape in India, which for me, the minute I LinkedIn messaged like 10 people who are amazing in the space saying that, hey, I'm a student looking to understand the space. Can we do a 5-minute call? I'd love to ask you these 2 questions. It's how I established those initial connections, right? And then 2 months later, I was like, hi, thanks so much. Here's the report. I'm also looking for an opportunity in the space. And that got me like 6 more phone calls. So, your black book maybe was not the most obvious way, or at least in my batch, there were not a lot of people looking to make that connect between their black book and their career interests. But for me, that was very important. And I feel very happy that I did that, because it got me those initial connections, which helped me get my internship. So very, very important to always keep thinking about, I have to do this. How can I connect it to what I'm interested in, what my bigger picture is? I think thirdly, it's about being smart. You need to be smart about what your edge is and what you bring to the table, right? And what is that white space in the sector which you can fill. So for me at the time, it was that finance and fundraising in the sector is being done by people who have not studied it. They have all done program roles and now are in fundraising, was my observation. So for me, the answer was, how can I build an edge in finance, right? And I did that by doing the CFA program. It's not a very common program for people in the space. It's very common at HR for like, mainstream finance. But for my purposes, it was a little uncommon, but it's really helped, because people don't understand these concepts at all in the rooms that we sit in. And then you're sitting there like, hey, I know how we can apply a bond to this problem, right? So that's a fun one. It's a good way to show your edge. So definitely keep thinking about A, what are you interested in? B, versus where's the gap in the sector and how can you marry the two? That's something that works a lot. I think fourth is that you have to be very vocal about your interests and shamelessly make your ask. Okay, you have nothing to lose. Just keep saying, I'm interested in this. I think I can help you with ABC. Honestly, I think even my level, I think enthusiasm and interest is a lot more valuable than experience. So to tell you how that worked for me, when I was interning at Dastra in my first week, I just randomly had coffee conversations with 10 people from 10 other teams. Okay. And 2 of those converted into projects that I got to do when I was an intern, which was not in my scope of work, but very much gave me the opportunity to even learn more and also just make a case for myself as an employee, right? And then get that offer. So it's very important to just keep saying that I want to do this. Here's how I can help, and happy to make it happen in whatever way works for you, and be super vocal that you want something and in most cases it's going to work out, but you just have to consistently keep making that ask very clearly and be very sharp about opportunities around you. And finally is just keep learning, keep reading. I think till date, I feel like I learn something new every day when I read like 5 new articles on all of those resources I told you folks about. But it's also about seeing how do you transfer that learning and reading to do something new at work. Like for me, it was that I was just looking at Dasra's reports and I was like, we have so much data, we can learn so much more from it. And then I went and taught myself Power BI, which is this data analytics and visualization tool. And I got it to Dasra. I said, look, here's what we can do. No one asked me to, but I made like my own dashboard out of it. And I told them, here's all the cool stuff you can do. And then I became that girl who knows how to do Power BI. So you have that edge. You are someone who knows something that nobody else does, and that's what brings value. So these are just some of the things, I was reflecting on my journey. I think looking at ENACTUS pictures made me very nostalgic. So it's just a little bit about what can you do a little differently, which A, is not hard, B, is definitely useful for you, and C, in all likelihood, might just work. So that's all from me. Sorry, I know I've exceeded time a little bit, but more than happy to just open it up for Q&A, any feedback, thoughts, anything that you want to ask, all of that. Yeah, just jump in.
So, Saloni, if you can just tell the team about Project Jalriddhi and a little bit about the ideation behind that, because maybe towards the end, as of now, I know we're focusing more on a long-term career and impact space, but maybe towards the end, that will be a good thing to kind of bring out, because we are also looking to launch a new project this year. So how to go ahead with the research and all that towards the end, that's my, one question, but maybe later.
Yes, we'll do that.
Meanwhile, I'd just like to ask one question. What are some actionable models that people use to measure impact? So this is one thing I've noticed. Even for nationals, we were trying to measure direct and indirect impact. And I found that so many of them are just vague terms. And I didn't know how to quantify a lot of things. So what are some models that are actually practically used in this sector to measure the impact? For example, the example you gave of 20 students learning and being literate. So if you can just throw some light on that, it would be great.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Maitri. It's something even I struggled with. I think all of us do it when we are, sitting, I think in the last week being like, okay, how do we put all this together? How do we show the impact of our work? So to just let you know, direct and indirect impact, if you're actually in the space, is not a good way of measuring how your work has helped. Okay, because very blurry lines, right? What is direct, what is indirect? How can you make confident attribution there? All of it is a bit of a gray area. The most common framework that gets used is something that's known as the outcomes framework. It has a lot of, it's called a theory of change. It's called an outcomes framework. It's called a log frame model. There are a lot of different words because people have, made some tweaks to it. But at the heart of it, they're all very similar, where basically what we're trying to say is that you need to be measuring your impact at different levels. And as you keep going up the level, the difficulty of reporting and monitoring increases. So at the very first level, you have inputs, okay, that what did we do for, let's take that example, okay, we're teaching 20 kids, 20 adolescent girls, they're 10th graders in Jharkhand. So now our job is to say, how can we report against what benefit this program had? So at the very first level is your input, where we would have said, okay, we had 5 teachers, 2 schools, we spent X number of hours, okay, so that's all of your resource allocation, that what did we do for this program? So that's at your input level. Then you have activity level, which is that, okay, we did X number of classes where we taught math, science, geography. We did these, sensitization trainings on gender equity and, maybe gender equity, sex education, So you have those kind of activity level reporting. And then you have outcomes, which is that, okay, now how did we record what came out of this, which is where things get tricky. And you only do that at reporting in the longer term. So there should have been, your program should have been operational for at least 2 to 5 years minimum. Sometimes 5 years is minimum. Sometimes we do it with 2 years. But that's to say that we tracked these girls 5 years or like 3 years after they left our program. And we were able to say that there was a 20% increase in the family income because now this girl is earning and contributing to, her family's pot of money at the end of every month. You can also say that we know for sure that gender equity dynamics in this village that we worked in have changed because now, 30% more girls are employed and also have completed higher ed. So similarly, you have, for ENACTUS, for our purposes, I would say that reporting would be more at an activity and inputs level. If we are running a program for a longer period of time, we may be able to do it at outcomes, but that is very complicated because you set up all of these frameworks to actually track the girl 5 years or 3 years after she's left the program, which is a fairly resource efficient task. A lot of money goes into building those kind of frameworks. But yeah, that's one of the most common ways in which you do this kind of reporting. And it's not as much about saying that, we worked with 20 women is our direct impact, 20 and assuming 5 people in one family, 100 is our indirect impact. That's not a great way of doing it. It's more about what can you confidently attribute to your own work, which is more at an activity and inputs level.
Okay, understood. Just a follow-up question. How much of this data is accessible and how easily is it accessible? For example, if it's the increase in family income, are people ready to share that?
In most cases, yes, because at your outcomes level, you've been in that community for really long. So there is this whole dynamic of trust and confidence where people know that your work has made a difference. So they are happy to and you have mechanisms, right? You will have community champions, you will have local level government who has access to this data. So there are ways of getting the data. If you are interested in seeing evolution in, India's macro development data, the Niti Aayog comes up with like this index every year, and they just came up with it a couple of months back on India's progress against all of the sustainable development goals. And it's very nicely done. It's a good dashboard. You can interactively see the progress. So you'll get a lot of this data there. So, I would recommend have a look at it. I'm happy to share a link later. But that's one of the ways you can see that what was captured, because you have to say that these are the metrics that will prove that we have met our outcomes. Okay, because when you start the program, you have to say, I want to accomplish A, B, C at the end of 5 years, and here are the 5 metrics I will track to say that I accomplished it. You might say that to make sure that we're able to track gender equity, one of the reasons why it does not exist right now is because girls don't have higher education access. So you may say one of the metrics is what was that increase in number of girls who went in for higher education after our program, and you have a benchmark that I am successful if I'm able to say this number increased by 25% in village X. So that's the kind of detailed, granular I think decision making and frameworking that you have to do. And then obviously it's about saying, okay, this is what we started off with, now where have we arrived when we get to that timeline in reporting.
Understood. Got it.
Saloni, I had a question. It's related to the role that you are currently doing. So you mentioned it's somehow related to social entrepreneurship as well as financial models and financial aspect of it. So I can resonate it with a a little bit of the role that you're saying. So I just wanted to know a little bit more about it. What exactly is the role, and how, if you want to achieve something of that sort in a career, so how to go about it? Just a gist. Yeah.
I'm sensing 2 themes to work on, and tell me if that's correct. One is the whole, how is this social entrepreneurship? And 2 is, where does your, for lack of a better word, everything you learned in finance, how does that get applied? Correct?
Yes.
So in terms of social entrepreneurship, for me, that's not through my full-time job at Dasra. It's through the startup I mentioned, which is Good Step, which is literally doing everything that a new ENACTUS project would do. And we'll get into that in a bit. But literally right from saying needs assessment to saying, okay, now what is the idea? What is the model? How do you execute it? I think, and obviously, where's the money coming from? Where's the team for this? All of that. So for me, that's the avenue for social entrepreneurship. But again, like I said, right, because I think I love getting things done. Like strategy and consulting is great because you're sitting behind your screen giving the best of ideas. You have zero ownership and execution. So for me, that was a little bit of a gap that I'd love to actually see execution, because operational work really helps you learn. So for me, Good Step was the avenue to do that. And that's one of the things I love about this space, right? You can carve your own opportunities. You feel like something's missing in your life, go build something, you'll get it done. So that's really one way to do it. In terms of finance, basically what we do is, let's say you have a funder. I do a lot of work with the Gates Foundation. Let's pick them up as an example. They have philanthropic money also, and they also have this big pot of money where they say that we are investing this in India and we want X percentage return. Typically, it is at somewhere between 8 to 10%, not more than that, because the Indian landscape is not evolved enough to beat market returns in social investing. So they say that, okay, we have this whole chunk of money that's available, and what we want to do is we want to work on healthcare in the Northeast. Specifically, we want to work on maternal and child healthcare. Okay, that's the problem statement. So now you're saying, okay, fine, this is the money that's available to me. This is the big problem. From a research perspective, you're going to study the problem. So we literally do all kinds of desk reviews, talking to experts, we'll do field visits, where you're trying to understand that what is that big problem and what are the micro gaps that are, let's say, affecting quality of healthcare for women and children in the Northeast. Then you say, okay, fine, now here I know what my problems are. Now, where is money needed? So that's why you'll put in your whole, you literally do like all kinds of estimation to say what is the cost of solving, let's say, access to nutrition for expectant mothers, because that's a problem, right? So we study what is the cost in our geography, and now does it make sense to, now how do I match the money? Okay, should I take this? Is this experimental? Is this pilot based? Can I not secure any return with this? Then I might match my philanthropy pool here. But if it's a model where I have a lot of startups, they are profitable, we study their documents. So that's where a lot of your basic financial analysis will come in, where you'll see their valuations, see their financial strength as an organization, all of that. And then if I'm able to say that, you know what, even if they invest in these startups, I think they can make a return 5 years down the line at X percentage, then maybe I can match the Gates Foundation's investment money here. So I think the application is in two ways. One is where you're assessing potential recipients as well as funders and trying to make the match. So you're trying to see how and where their finances align. And two is when you're trying to estimate the cost of solving problems. And then you're trying to see now what is the best source of funding for this. So, you know, those are some of the ways, and people do it. You also have mainstream, I would say, financing, where all of your valuation models, ratio analysis, etc., would come in, where, let's say, if you're working with an impact VC, you have a lot of those. You know, you have Umitya Network, a bunch of names, Avishkar, Intellicap. All of these guys are venture capital firms in this space. If you're working with them, then you'll have all of that regular statement analysis as well, where literally all of they're working with startups day in and day out. So they are valuing them. They're saying, okay, now we want to come in and support you to do ABC. Here's the stake we want. So then that's one of the most common ways in which you will very much apply all kinds of, finance related basic knowledge every day. So a bunch of things, all depends on your role, but these are some of the ways in which it happens.
Got it. Thank you so much.
I think we had a bit of a segue into the whole how do we start projects at ENACTUS, and how did we do Jalruddhi, the whole piece that Kanupriya was talking about. So I'm just going to get into that very quickly, and feel free to think of other questions in the meantime. But basically for us, and I'll do this a little bit through storytelling and lessons and all of that. But for us, it was literally, I think it was one of our first couple months at ENACTUS. And, like I said, there was this whole open call for ideas that, okay, HR ENACTUS is looking for a new project. What can we do? Guidance wise, it's all about saying, okay, you should be able to make a case, which is that you're making a business case also, that this makes sense monetarily and it can run as a self-sustaining enterprise. Because like you all know, we don't run non-profit causes at ENACTUS where we pump money endlessly. Our goal is that how can this be a self-sustaining cycle, and two, obviously, how can you make a case that there is a genuine need for whatever problem you're trying to solve. Other than that, there was a lot of creative freedom, in terms of You could do any sector you want, geography, as long as it's accessible, makes sense for the students, all of that. So we had these basic guidelines. We also had a couple of sessions with our seniors coming in, talking about projects that they had started, how they did it, a little bit of this whole, inspiration, understanding and learning from experiences. So Anshul and I were working on, both of us had joined ENACTUS. We were very excited about the idea, generally loved the space, had been volunteering as, students in junior college and all of that also. So for us, it was very exciting that, oh wow, you have the opportunity to really start something of your own. And when it's backed by an institution, your risks are far lesser, right? If we were supposed to start Jalruti today outside of ENACTUS, it would have been a far more challenging process. When you do it within ENACTUS, the connections, networks, goodwill that ENACTUS, HRC, and also HR College as an institution brings with itself are behind you, and that's a much better way to start. So for us, it was that, okay, this is a golden opportunity. What do we do? Both of us would literally meet for days after college and think about it's basic online searching. Okay, if our focus area is Maharashtra, the first thing you should do is look at home. Okay, look around you, what are the problems that you see? So I think what Anshul and I wanted to do is, we were very interested. Both of us had these roots of families which have led us back to villages very often for pilgrimages and seeing things at home and all of that. So for us, it was very interesting to say, how can we consider the rural context? So I think step one is understand where you want to solve the problem, because rural versus urban at a very basic level makes a great deal of difference. Then two is, once you've decided on that context, what is the problem? So for us, at that point, we had very limited access to people. So we would literally ask our help at home and their families, help of our, household, help of our relatives, people in our building, all of that, to say, where are you from? What is your day like? Because before I understand, you may say that, acha, mere ghar pe education, mere bachche ka, school nahi acha hai, whatever. Unless you understand what their daily life and context is like, you are not going to be able to understand the, magnanimity of the problem. Is this essential to that context or not? So for us, it was literally about just having very random conversations with people who were coming from the settings that we were interested in. So literally, even it was office staff of our parents, their friends, lala, household help, all of that. One of the things, so we had literally just started making this very simple Word doc, where we were okay, we made a table. We said, okay, people have talked about ABC in education, that the girl is not allowed to go to school, or that education, the teachers are not good, whatever. Water is something that kept coming up. Okay, so that's why we said, okay, water looks interesting. It's not we had shortlisted it. We said this is a good place to start. I think we had done one or two things before that which didn't work out, and then water seemed like an interesting one to also explore. So that's when we got a little bit more into it, where again the lesson is that you have to keep trying. Okay, you have to keep testing and moving on, because at the idea stage, if you're going to detail out your model to the T and it doesn't work, it's a waste of resources, right? So you have to build a very bare bones skeleton and say, okay, now this is what I want to do broadly. It is not at its prettiest, most detailed best, but I can make it work. And then I go test it. As simple as that. So then, we had a little bit of an idea of what was the problem we were trying to solve. Now for us, it was to say that how do we actually test if this is a problem in the geographies that we can work with? So literally, I had just called, we found this organization called the Impact India Foundation on Google. Okay, we had no idea who they were, but they were doing amazing work. They ran this Lifeline Express, which is a train that offers all kinds of specialty health surgeries and that kind of stuff across the country. That train moves across states and all of that. Very cool organization. I remember I just randomly called and I said, hey, you do this work in Maharashtra. We had studied the geography. So Palghar as a geography did have a lot of water related problems. So we started by looking at organizations which are in Palghar. IIF was the first name that came up. So I just randomly called this lady, very sweet people, got very excited by, oh wow, there are students who want to do this. HR is a well-known name, all of that. Our ask to them was very simple. We think we want to work in the water space. We want to ask 10 questions to the communities that you operate in. Can you help us do a 2-day needs assessment visit? And they said, sure. And they were lovely people. They sent they basically have these women who are working as their representatives in every block and village in Talkar. So we had divided ourselves into like 7-8 groups. One person accompanied us. I have somehow done a needs assessment study in Marathi. My Marathi is not great, but it was a great time. Like when you say that you're trying and you're trying to connect.
Just one over here. When we went for the needs assessment, because the questionnaire was in Marathi and we needed to ask the questions in Marathi, so we actually detailed the groups because we had to go in, I think, 12 or 13 villages, and we divided the entire ENACTUS team into 12, 13 groups, and each group we decided should have someone who knows how to speak in Marathi. So we divided like that, and everyone was carrying a water wheel, and on bikes we used to carry that water wheel and go to the different villages to find out. And this was on 2 consecutive days. We stayed overnight in the village as well.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then one of the interesting learnings there is that you should not be entering a geography acting as someone from the outside who has suddenly come in to help people. It doesn't fly. You should always go in through a tried and tested person, organization, whatever, in that context. And it's like they have to be at the forefront because they are the known face, and you have to coordinate things and make sure that happens on the back end. Because if we are the faces running everything, the acceptance is very limited. Because one of the things we learned a little later, 6-8 months down the line in Jalrati, is that in all of these organizations, NGOs come every week. Okay, they come every week. They say, हम आपके लिए ये करेंगे, हम आपके लिए वो करेंगे, हमको ये data दो, वो data दो. One of you shared that would someone be comfortable giving their family income data? No, because they are scarred now. Like people have come in and collected all kinds of data, not done anything for them. So literally for us, it was that, okay, now that can't be our approach. So IIF is an organization that had been there for like a good number of years, and they were very sweet, offered us, I think we got lucky there because literally the first call, random Google search that we picked up, and they sent like a team of 10 people for us, arranged for all kinds of support. Their team was also translating in some cases because our Marathi was honestly not that great. So, all of that kind of support is always available to you when you have that intent. And I think there's authenticity in like your just interest in working to help people. So you're not coming in saying that हम ये करेंगे, वो करेंगे, whatever. You're actually detailing it out. Here's the problem. We've done our research. We know our shit. We have this one pager here. What do you think? Here's the wheel. We are actually taking that wheel and gone. Very logistically difficult, but very, very useful in showing that clarity of purpose, that we really want to do this. Here's the solution, but does it help? The other thing that you don't want to do is force fit that solution. So it's not like we went with the water wheel saying we want to sell this. We were not there on a marketing expedition. We were there on a research expedition to say that, here's one product. Here are 2-3 others. Now, what is useful? Can we like understand where you're at and where you're coming from? And accordingly, can we see what works best? So at that point, literally, like I said, right, we just knew that the wheel was a good idea. There were a couple of these water purification pills we wanted to test. We didn't know how we were going to make it happen. So that whole cross-subsidy model, etc., was not detailed out until we said that this is the solution. Now, how do we make it reach people? So that's the other thing, that you want to be quick about testing. You don't want to say that humko sab kuch malum hai, we know how we will finance this, and now we will take it to the people, because chances are they don't need it and you're going to be stuck with that model and it's not going anywhere.
So sorry to cut you off.
Just one thing I'll add. So I still remember that, we thought that it's going to be easy. I mean, we didn't think it was going to be easy, but yeah, to some extent we thought that, okay, what are the possible questions they could ask? They are not going to be so aware about the consequences of using a water wheel or whatever. So they asked a lot of product related questions. And then I still remember in one of the villages, there was a lady who was middle-aged, and she said that generally it's the middle-aged ladies who go to get the water from the water source. And in that particular village, the water source was down a slope, and they had to bring the water wheel back up. So after filling the water wheel with 25 liters of water, they would have had to roll it back up. And they were like, we don't think we can do this in our village because it's going to be so difficult to carry it back up. And then one of the students, and the boy student, he volunteered, no, we can do it. Let me show it to you. We can do it. And he was like, the lady said, no, we want a middle-aged lady to do this. And that's when I had to come in and say, okay, I'm going to do this. And I had to fill the water and take it up the slope. There are videos of that which went viral on all ENACTUS groups. But yeah, that's how, they are very sure of what they want, and they want exactly, they're not going to just go with, because you're talking nicely to them, just agree to everything that you're saying. So you have to be sure of what you are putting forward for them.
Yeah, I know. I still remember that. It was very steep, huh? It was like a proper task to bring it up. But what worked for us is the fact that we demonstrated it in that terrain was like word of mouth. We did that is not advertising we did. It's what all of them told each other across villages, because these communities are super close knit, right? So word traveled before we reached the next village कि ये इधर काम कर रहा है तो हमारे में तो काम करेगा, हमारा तो कितना simple है. So that got us to like increase uptake, increase how accepting people were of the idea and all of that. So literally that needs assessment, I think, was an amazing experience. Till date, it has taught me a lot about how you go to communities, how you talk. You have to adopt to their context, right? Literally, one of the small learnings I have is at that point, I'm very OCD about cleanliness. So I will eat my own food and I will not eat food anywhere else. But they used to make these amazing lunches for us, and they have really put in a lot of effort. Okay. And then it's like saying no and hurting people's feelings and being a little disrespectful. If you say, even if you're polite about it, if you're not accepting their food or water in their house, that's not going to help you, and it's also generally not the best thing to do. So for me, it was a little bit of that shift that no, it's okay, I'm going to be fine. I eat all this rubbish food all the time, like in around college canteens and all of that, so I can take this, but you can't say no. Like, one of the small learnings that we have to be respectful about everyone's culture, and we have to make sure we are treating everyone as equals, because that is going to make sure that our approach is a nice and welcoming one, which people automatically gravitate towards. So literally, that site visit, and I really wish and hope, and maybe after COVID, I'm happy to organize something, because we keep doing village visits at Dasra, but that is something which will really change your outlook. And if you want to be in this space, it's so important to be close to the people that you want to work for, because that will very much shape even just your passion and interest in doing more, right? Like, if you want to learn that course, finish that degree, do everything which is difficult to do, the day after a site visit is the best way to get it done, because you are most inspired and most excited by everything you have learned. So that was a little bit about how we actually established if this is a model that works. So it was all about experimentation. We had 3-4 models. We actually took all of them. We tested them in the village. We saw that this water wheel and these pills that we had, which were water purification, very simple to put in the water, no electricity, nothing needed. These two worked well in the context of the places that we wanted to work in. And because we had such an amazing connect and partner at the Impact India Foundation, we said we'll do our pilot with them, because they have an amazing presence. You also want to be smart about the partners that you have, because, imagine if IIF worked only in Vada, which is where we started, but they didn't have presence anywhere else, then we would be looking for our next partner very soon. But IIF made sense because they were there across Palghar. So literally, we would say that we want to do a pilot in Vada. If this works, will you help us reach this other place, And they were more than happy to do that. So be strategic about the partners that you go for and get good ones from day one. Like, literally, even the people you do a needs assessment with should have high potential. Sure, partnerships go sour all the time. Things may not work out. The person you were working with is no longer there. All of that happens, which is not in your control. But when you are looking for a partner, you have to do these basic checks, which is that what is their motivation? What are the gives and gets? What is their presence in your area of interest? Maybe we are running another program in education right now. It's menstrual hygiene at the same time. If they also work on that, that's a plus for us. So how do you be smart about assessing partners, right? That was something we just learned by default, because we just got very lucky, and then we saw the value in having them as a partner very, very strongly. But that was the process in terms of coming to saying that, okay, this is the product and this is what the solution is. Now it was all about thinking that, how do we make this happen ENACTUS style, right? Because it's very easy to get this funded, literally get someone to say, okay, we'll sponsor X number of wheels and do it. But obviously our goal and motto is very much that, how do you make it sustain by itself, and how do we generate the funds to do this ourselves within our model? So it was very difficult to come up with something for the water wheel. There was a lot of experimentation. We were just like, can it be somebody's job within the community to sell these wheels? Can we create employment out of it? But those were not viable options. They sound glamorous, that okay, you can have a community champion, local entrepreneur selling these wheels, renting them out. We had thought of all of these models, but we kept testing them. We kept asking IIF what they think would fly, and none of this seemed like it was very feasible. It may have worked with a couple of people, but may not really fly overall. And that's when I think with that experimentation, we came to a cross subsidy model, which is basically that if we want to sell these wheels and pills, obviously at subsidized rates, like one wheel costs 2,500 bucks, and when we did our needs assessment, we had understood people are willing to pay 500 rupees. So it's our job to subsidize this by 2,000. How do I do that? How do we finance that bridge, right? That gap. So that's when we kind of learned about cross subsidy models. We said, you know what if within this village, we set up some kind of income generating unit, which is also providing employment opportunities to a different section, and we make profits out of that, and those profits will finance that water wheel ka subsidization. So that was the, again, bare bones model. Again, went to IIF. We used to sit with that. There was this amazing lady who had founded it, very sweet, very excited and interested in everything HR wanted to do. So she would like happily sit with us, and we worked with them to identify what can that cross subsidy be. So literally we understood that women in the villages are interested and have basic skills in tailoring. So we said, okay, so they can make tailored products. What can they make? Bags sell. We can sell bags in the networks we have. IIF said, yeah, that's a good idea. So again, we tested it out. We did it. I think the good thing about it is that it was all working in the same ecosystem. Like literally the villages where we had women sewing our bags were also villages where they were using water wheels. So for us, even from at the end of the day, you also have to be smart that while a model may sound great, can this team operationally make it work? And for us at the time also, we had very small budgets, right? It used to cost 5,000 bucks to take a car trip to Vada every single time. So how many of these visits? Imagine if we had set up a center somewhere, water wheel somewhere else, all of that, it would have been a logistical hassle, and it's just hard to do that. So for us, I think it was very nice, and it all came along very well, where we were able to get it all started in the same ecosystem. And then every time we expanded, I think for us, the prerequisite was that sure, we will give wheels where we don't have the tailoring unit, because it's not possible. You can't scale the wheels. The wheels are product, right? You sell, it's gone, you move on, go to the next village. But the whole bag setup is a process in and of itself, where you are finding people, making sure they will continue, training them, giving them cloth, It's a very big deal, and lots of things going into it. So we said that okay, let's be super big on expanding the presence of the wheels, and we kept on going to villages. Then we found 2-3 other NGOs which have worked with ENACTUS HR before, and they liked the idea, so they were willing to sell the wheels, all of that. But for the bags, we stuck to like 2 production centers. And we said one was the one that was through IIF, and the other was through another organization that we had found. And we said, these are the 2 centers. This is where we make all our bags. So scale for the bags meant more women in the same geography. And scale for the wheels meant more villages, more people, whoever needs it, anywhere, everywhere. So you can see how like your approach to both the models, even though it's very much the same project, needs to be different, needs to be tailored to what you're trying to do. And you can't really be doing the same thing everywhere, because in most cases it may not make sense. So I think that was a little bit about how we started operationalizing Jalriddhi. One of my learnings, I think, when I think about it, is just people management. I feel like that's something I really learned and was challenged with at ENACTUS, because I used to take care of a lot of the bag production business in the first center that we set up. And, literally like that woman, there's a lady, I still remember, Kalpana, she sends me a hi sometimes these days and whatever. But like, she was the one who was taking care of all the other women who were a part of the bag production center in Vada. And out of 7 women, at any point, somehow 4 or 5 would just leave, because it's very hard. Retention is hard. They don't have any great motivation. Sometimes they get better opportunities, and obviously they have no obligation to keep sticking to ENACTUS's project, right? They will move. So now how do we make sure that we are dynamic, we are nimble, and we are still able to make sure our work is happening? Because we used to have, literally, I remember we had an order for like 5,000 bags or something, and there were 3 women. Initially there was supposed to be 7 women doing it, and that's the basis on which we had committed to our client and all of that. But somehow, like, it was harvest season, education. We didn't know all of that. So the women were working in the fields, and 4 of them said, we can't execute this order. We had to make it happen with 3. Then I had a friend in ENACTUS only. Her mom used to work with another set of women. So we divided our orders, and half of our women did it, and half of the aunties center did it. So literally, it's also about like, thoda jugaad, like get things done, because it will not be, it's not a smooth ride at all. You will keep having things that change. Sometimes you will, I wouldn't say be taken for a ride, but sometimes you will be underestimated because you are a student. That is what you have to challenge and fight. You have to say, hey, that's an enabler. It's not a debilitator, right? Like the fact that we are students, because people will often be like, अच्छा ये बच्चे तो चले जाएंगे, दो साल में कॉलेज होगा, फिर तो ये नहीं होंगे, whatever. So people often have that reservation when working with college students, and our job is to show that, and that's actually your top question even at ENACTUS Nationals, that how are you going to sustain this project as your batches move out, and that is what you have to solve for. Like, how do you make sure you have knowledge transfer? How do you make first years leaders of projects, right? So that at least from the time that you are in your second or third year to they are in their second or third year, for a good 5-6 years, at least your project is sorted, and you keep that cycle going, so continuity remains. So I would say, like, I often think about this, and I think one of the things all ENACTUS teams suffer with is that, for example, Jagriti was my baby, so I was very committed to it, but maybe two batches down the line, they had not experienced all of these fun things that we had experienced. And one of the things we could have done better is carved more opportunities for them to do that. Right? Like literally within the same project, you can have changing leadership roles, you can have changing, pieces that people can take ownership of, because ownership is a very useful motivator. When something is mine, I will do my best. And how do we use that very smartly to make sure our team is more committed is something that I think ENACTUS just generally as an organization can do so much more with. Because I think it's literally a problem with all kinds of ENACTUS clubs, Delhi, Bombay, everyone. And it's about saying that we don't need to keep changing our projects with people, because we've invested in projects, we should commit to them. But instead, how do we make sure we continue innovating within the projects and come up with more pieces that people can own? And then they are motivated, and then 3 years you're set. So literally, that kind of stuff is also something that I think that, I keep thinking about later, that, okay, we could have done this, we could have done that. But yeah, overall, I mean, pretty good journey. Consistency is key. Ownership was a big motivator. Like literally through our exams, through internships, everything, we were always committed to Jagriti. We said, okay, I was doing this thing at EY, they had some really crazy hours, all of that, but I knew my weekends were for ENACTUS, come what may. Like I would say no to them for like some time pass engagements they wanted me to do, and be like, sorry, have this commitment, need to do it. Which really comes from just seeing what you're working on, having done those visits, being very invested in the idea, and then you make everything happen. Because college life is very dynamic, right? Today you're doing something, tomorrow you're doing something else. So consistency generally at anything is a struggle. How do you work better at it is only going to happen when you're motivated and invested in what you're working on. And consistency is really what makes ENACTUS fly. Because we could have dropped on those projects, we could have like so many, like literally 3 visits I can think of. If we wouldn't have found people to do them, we may not have executed the project, because we wouldn't have known what we have to do. So literally it's about saying, how do you make people show up, how do you motivate them, and how do you keep a team that's consistent? Because if you're always going to be working with new people coming in at different times, teaching all of them, you're not moving ahead. You're constantly in that same cycle, and that's not the best way to do it. So yeah, I mean, that's just a little bit of my journey. Ma'am, if you want to add anything, folks, if you have any questions, reflections, happy to hear. I'm so sorry I'm taking up more of your time on a Saturday evening. I can go on about ENACTUS, so I need to be shut up. But yeah, tell me. I mean, happy to hear anything you guys are thinking.
So I just wanted to say this one thing, that being in this online mode, we are all missing it so much. All the things that you mentioned, most of them were the part of that offline environment out there. So we are literally missing it out like so much. It's my second year, 4th sem. And I really hope that, colleges reopen now. It's high time now.
No, I hope so too. But what I will do is, a good step. We are very much, and that's something I control entirely. Dasra, you have a little bit more of a framework to navigate if we want college students to come along. But we are very much I'm doing work with in Dharavi and Thane with with one of them is called Dharavi Diary, the other is called Shamta. So one of them is teaching these really brilliant kids from Dharavi how to code apps which are solving Dharavi's own problems. One of them came up with something for women's safety. The other one came in for a system that, okay, women are waiting in line for water. How can they be alerted and given slots? Very practical solutions, very simple apps where the girls are doing them. So that's one organization. The other one is an organization called Shamta, which is in Thane, and they are working with survivors of sex trafficking, their children, and saying, how can we reintegrate you into society? So if either of these two are interesting to you folks, I am more than happy to plan a visit, because I know that I love people coming into the space, and I know that these experiences are very important. So happy to, do that. And if ENACTUS, like literally think of it as a field visit. Don't even think of it as, we need to make an ENACTUS linkage formally or anything of that sort. But we can literally just make an activity around it. There's a lot we can help these. Things which are often basic knowledge for us are sometimes different. Like literally I was helping someone making a resume that day. All of us know how to do that. So we can come up with a workshop or whatever, and happy to take a team along if you guys are okay, COVID permitting and all of that. Definitely happy to make it happen sometime soon.
Definitely, for sure. We are, noting it down right now.
Yeah, please do, and let me know. I'm honestly, like, no jokes, very happy to do this. Like, it will be a lot of fun.
And it could just be a way of looking at what possibly could be an idea for a future project, because I think it's really important to look at things to find out where the gaps are and what the problems are that are existing in society.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and especially post-COVID, like things have changed a lot. Like maybe the problems have also changed for the people who are experiencing these. So it's important to, get a real-time idea of what's happening over there.
No, 100%. Ma'am, I'm happy to. So that's why I does a lot of COVID relief work. So I generally have a little bit of a pulse, unlike, because we do a lot of work in Maharashtra. So I have a little bit of a pulse on, if you're looking at, let's say, women's rights as a space, what's the gap there in COVID and all of that. So if you guys are having any active brainstorming sessions, happy to join them for a bit and just help navigate that. I know that we're in the process of putting together a report also, which is on state of the sector in a post-COVID world kind of theme. So even that will highlight what are the challenges. Can the team solve some of them? So happy to join on some of that. It'll just reduce your work a little bit, because this is ready knowledge in a lot of our heads. So more than happy to kind of come in and share that.
Great, that would be great. I think when we are finally, shortlisting the project that we want to do, we would have you on board for that, because then we would get real idea of whether it will really work out there or not. Maybe you and other people from the team who have been, I know of another student, you must be knowing Misha Gandhi. She's also working in the, impact sector. So development sector, yeah.
In fact, for anyone looking at something outside of ENACTUS, Misha started this thing called Consult for Humanity. You should check it out. It's on Instagram also. And what they're doing is they're looking for pro bono consultants. They do have, I think it's after you graduate or something like that, you should have minimum 1 year work ex, but I think they were going to do away with it. So I don't know where they're at right now. But that's very much like a crash course on what at least social impact consulting is like. So anyone who's interested in getting into the whole consulting side of things, they basically give you these projects and somebody's guiding you. You have a project lead and you have a very well-defined project. It's a great way to get interested in the space. So definitely check that out. And of course, Misha is also an actress, should be happy to help.
Yes. So I'm sure everyone is really inspired by Saloni's talk and really looking forward to the fresh year at ENACTUS. And I just thought that I'll share a little surprise for Saloni as well as all the people who are here. So I'll just share the screen. Give me a minute. Yes, so Saloni, I don't know if you would remember this. So this was India Today. Today they covered Project Jalvriddhi. So Project Jalvriddhi received a lot of media coverage and a lot of interest from publications as well as websites. So India Today also covered it. We also got interviewed for a very, very long interview by Z News. And we were awarded by Maharashtra Times. I think the only student organization to get awarded by Maharashtra Times. So this is just some, a flashback into what Project Jalvriddhi was all about. And we received a lot of appreciation for the work that the students were doing. And HR College itself was, backing everything that all these students were doing for Project Jalvriddhi. So that's Saloni there. She looks exactly the same, so I don't have to introduce her. She looks exactly the same. Yeah.
Oh my God, yeah, this was such a fun time. So I think, concluding note is that you even get these kind of opportunities which develop you as a person. Like ma'am said, this lady Moina from India Today, she grilled us for like 3 hours about Jalvriddhi. What do you do? How do you do it? How's this finance? La la la. You learn to speak. Speaking is most important. Honestly, unfortunately, we live in a world that's going to judge you in the first 30 seconds of you opening your mouth. So how do you make sure that those first 30 seconds are so on point that you have that, leeway and access to 10-minute conversation to make your ask? So the first 30 seconds are about establishing yourself and your credibility and getting someone interested. That, tell me more. So I feel like ENACTUS also helped us with that, because it taught you, it taught me, very important for me was that it's not about how well I speak, it's about how well someone understands me. And then you have to contextualize to that. So, me sitting in that village in Palghar doing that needs assessment was a very different Saloni from the one answering questions in the Q&A panel on nationals. So you learn to adapt a lot because you are put in such different settings. You are working with students, so your way of dealing with them and guiding them and making sure everyone's on point with our plans is very different from how you are presenting yourself when you're talking to like business leaders, your KPMGs of the world, and you're presenting to their CEOs, answering their questions, versus how you are dealing with a non-profit team, like sitting literally the way we used to talk to the Impact India Foundation, ki please kar dena, humko ye karna, wo karna, whatever. Like, your whole personality, attitude, way of talking is very different. So I think one of the interesting things ENACTUS does, like I was a part of like debate societies and all of that at HR too, but what they do is they make you better at the same thing. What ENACTUS does is it puts you in so many different situations, and you do that like a couple of times and you learn how to deal with all of them. Okay, which is honestly, like, I can't tell you how important that is, because that's what your college is a very safe space. After that, it's going to be all about like very competitive. How do you like mark your edge in like a world that is, like there are so many kids and everybody's so smart. So what is your edge and what is that standout? I think this definitely helps, because literally I remember when I was looking at interviews at Dasra after I got in. So even I was interviewing a couple of people and I could see that someone would not do well on a field visit. You can just tell, you can know that this person is going to sit there and not know how to talk to anyone. It's a -10, we can't hire them. But for me, it was that, okay, I've done this at ENACTUS, I know how to do it. I would share my stories and it was established that I can do this. So, it really makes a difference, that whole, it's something that we tend to ignore, but just getting into those different situations and learning how to navigate them is just so, so important. It will often give you an edge even over someone who maybe has a better resume. Just the fact that you know how to deal with all of these different settings. And, you can be in a boardroom, but you can also be on a site visit and you will be of equal importance. So, yeah.
Absolutely. I think I completely agree with that. I think on that note, if we don't have any further questions, I'll just give my vote of thanks. If there are any questions, we can just have them right now. Okay, I'm assuming they're not. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Or I think I should say good evening now. So I'd like to begin by extending my vote of thanks to our speaker for today, Saloni. It was such a fresh and interesting, yet practical first-hand insight into the social development sector. And I'm sure each and every one of us present here is taking back something. Personally, as a third-year student, right now I'm at a crossroad where I'm exploring different career paths and opportunities. So this came out as a very, very, very valuable piece of information for me. And I'll surely reach out to you for the internship opportunities that you spoke of. And I'm pretty sure today's session also had the first and second years charting out a mental roadmap of where they want to take their professional life. So once again, thank you so much, Saloni, for making time for this from your busy schedule. And I've been going back and forth communicating with you for the past couple of days. And thank you for being extremely prompt when I reached out to you. And I hope we get to invite you for a session soon and more of these sessions, and preferably physically at college the next time round. And also would like to thank the audience who turned up today. I think some of them left, but a lot of people joined in at a short notice. And also my ENACTUS team members who ensured that everything went smoothly. So with that, I think I'll hand it over back to you now, Vitika. You can take it ahead from me.
Yeah, so I think today was honestly one of the most informative sessions that I've had. And yeah, as a first year student, I'm pretty new to all of this. So I genuinely would like to give you my vote of thanks and would really like to say how much I appreciated this session. And on behalf of everybody else also, it was something that was really required to, kind of realize how much work goes into doing all of this. And it's not something easy. So thank you for giving us that insight. It was truly an honor to host you today. And yeah, I would also like to thank Kanupriya ma'am for staying for the entire session and, giving us her inputs and, her insight into whatever she saw in her year. So yeah, thank you so much for attending the session, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you